All right. Hey, every founder dreams of pitching the right investor at the right time. But behind every deal, there's a connector, someone who knows how to bring people, ideas, and capital together. Today's guest, Scott Kelly, has been doing that for decades as CEO of Black Dog Venture Partners, host of Emerging Managers podcast, and creator of the VC Fast Pitch. Welcome, Scott Kelly, to the Go for CEO channel. How are you?
Good, great. Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome, brother. Well, hey, look, we always like to hear kind of, all right, Black Dog, that's a cool name. Like, where did that come from? What's going on? What was the ideation behind it? So tell us a little bit of
Sure.
that story and we'll get started.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Black Dog's not a glorious story. I just happened to own a Black Dog at the time I incorporated the company a few decades ago. But John, I've been a deal guy for 30 plus years. I've been on both sides. I started working on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange in the early 80s, moved to San Francisco in 86, worked as an investment banker, taking technologies companies public. I did that till 93. 93, in the midst of the dot-com boom, I sit on my first of three internet companies that we successfully exited between 93 and 2000. 2000, retired briefly. Tell everybody that was my first unsuccessful retirement. Moved to Arizona. A few months later, I started a sports entertainment company, which I ran for about 6 years, and then I sold that. And then 2006, launched Black Dog. And the real idea behind that was that a lot of the later stage venture capital firms were sending us companies that were too early for them. So good companies, but not big enough. And so we work with a lot of these early stage technology and consumer product companies to help them raise their seed, Series A, help them scale their business, build their team, go to market, and then eventually help them exit. And since that time, we've been successfully helped raise about $5 billion in capital for these companies, about 30 exits during that time, in addition to myself. We've built an investor network of 13,000 investors that we've done deals with over the last 30 years. And as you mentioned, I do host a VC Fast Pitch, which is our online and in-person pitch where we put entrepreneurs in front of investors. They get 5 minutes to pitch. And then some Q&A. We raised about $130 million from those events. And then last year, I launched the Emerging Managers podcast to get exposure to lesser known venture capital firms. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. Look, and you took the capacity of all the competencies that you had throughout the years and kind of meshed it together, right? And you've got these three verticals that are really working well together. I think at the GoFCO community, we're always looking like, hey, how can we think like a CEO, act like a CEO, like create avenues and faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun, and like where can we build ourselves up? So it's really cool that you took those steps in helping these new stage companies. I know quite a few in the Series A side of things, and they're always kind of challenged to, all right, hey, the burn rate is this. Where do we bring in new investors? How can we not totally dilute ourselves? So
Right.
it's always a big deal as well. So, all right, so the business itself of Black Dog Ventures, what is is it a consultancy? Do they come into like a framework where they learn for a certain amount of
Yeah.
time? And so how does that
It's
build out?
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's an accelerator. We make investments through memberships that I have in several angel groups and through special purpose vehicles. But the reality is, we built Black Dog because honestly, a lot of companies may want to raise capital. The vast majority of them don't need to raise capital. They need other things. They need the ability to sell their product or service. If they're a technical founder, they may need marketing and sales support. Yeah, they may need to go to market. They need to bring in some gray hairs, onto their cap table. And so our philosophy is to solve problems and create opportunities. And sometimes these problems are solved by capital and sometimes they're solved by something else. So we take kind of a one-on-one approach when a company approaches us as how we can best be, useful to them.
Nate. So and then as far as the engagement process, what was that like? I mean, how did you figure out what to charge them? At what point do you put in revenue needs to be
Sure,
able to get paid? Obviously for Black Dog itself.
sure. It depends on the situation itself. I don't necessarily have a standard, agreement or engagement per se. I look at each opportunity and I really find out if I can add value to them, then we'll work with them. And value could be access to debt, equity, or other forms of capital, maybe grants. Um, benefits could be using my network. I've got 30,000 plus, partners, business partners, and media sources in my network. So if I can help them in that regard, we'll do that. We had a company a few years ago. They wanted to raise $2 million, and I looked at their product and I sold $2 million of their product, and so we solved that problem without having to dilute the company or take on debt. So each engagement is really different. Sometimes we're an investor, sometimes we're an advisor, sometimes we take a short-term engagement to handle a specific goal that they need to accomplish. It really depends on the opportunity.
Interesting. Well, there's dynamic in that, so that's pretty awesome that you have flexibility and you can kind of approach it in a consultative way. As a commercial banker, I'm always looking at for how do I differentiate myself, and I'm sure there's a lot of capital companies out there, a lot of consultancies, but to differentiate yourself, really taking a look at the way that you speak to them and find out what their needs are, and then differentiate yourself that way. And by the way, shameless plug, chapter 2 of my book, how, the 4A formula, untangle any challenge and think like a CEO is alignment. Think about it, Go for CEO channel. You're talking about a gentleman, Scott Kelly, connected to 30,000 investors. That is alignment, getting into Scott's hemisphere and understanding how he can help you with Black Dog. Pretty awesome stuff. So, all right, hey, let's go back a little bit because I think there's
Mhm.
some tons of value. You exited multiple times. What type of scenarios were you in and industries that allowed you now to then go to this level? And what were some of those dynamics of leadership and how you learned?
hmm Well, you mentioned alignment. I think alignment is extremely important. The one thing learned early in my career is two things: what I know, but more importantly, what I don't know. And when I don't know something, find someone who does know it and align yourselves with them. And that's the thing that it's really been, my moniker with the entrepreneurs that we work with is that, I work with a lot of very good technical founders. They're solid engineers. They got great coding skills, but frankly, they may not be good at marketing, sales, accounting, legal. So alignment is really the tool I've used to be successful. With my previous startups that exited, my current business, a new business I'm developing, and with the entrepreneurs I work with. So. Getting back to, I would tell everyone reread chapter 2 on alignment. It's definitely something that is important to move forward.
No, I appreciate that, and it's so interesting because everybody talks about your network is your net worth,
hmm
but they don't realize, right, that knowing a guy like Scott, like you, right, that may turn into another connection that becomes another connection, and your 6 degrees of separation, and that's where one person can change your whole life, right? So
Absolutely. That actually, I've used that term, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, often. Um, and honestly, my very first career success was to align myself with someone who could really do a lot of things for me. And I think also, speaking of books, probably the favorite book I ever read was The Millionaire Next Door. It basically told me about how to align with people that are truly affluent versus pseudo affluent. And I was a 22-year-old stockbroker. I moved from New York to Lafayette, Louisiana. In my third day in the business, Mr. Abear buys $500,000 of municipal bonds on the phone. And my boss told me, get in the car and go pick up the check. And I drove this Mr. Abear's house, and it was a metal shack. Mr. Abear was sitting in his rocking chair, whittling some wood, and maybe he had 7 teeth in his mouth. And at 22, my very first investor meeting, he gave me a check for $2 million. And I said, Mr. Abear, I don't want to sound rude, but this isn't a very fancy house. And he goes, follow me. And he took me around the corner of his house, and what used to be rice fields was oil derricks as far as the eye could see. It turned out he was making $8 to $10 million a month in oil royalties. And fast forward a few years later, he was one of the lead investors when I launched my company in California 8 years later.
Wow, what an incredible story. And GoFCO channel, that's the type of things that you have to be aware of, right? And be alert to who can you connect with, right? To be aligned with the right people, and then obviously take accountability and follow up, right? Like you went and picked up the check. That there's a lot of significance in that, right?
Right.
That you made the actual effort to, press the flesh. The other day, I was closing a deal, and this gentleman's worth, about 300 million, and I went to have dinner with him at his place of local proximity because we needed to close the deal, and I wasn't going to make him, hey, print something out, sign it, and then fax it back to me or scan it back to me, right? I actually did
Mhm.
that personal touch and went there. So a lot of
Right.
value in that. So awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, look, there's a lot of things that you could teach us. I mean, we could probably spend 3 hours together, but Black Dog, VC fast pitch, how do those interact with each other? And how did you put that kind of combination of
Yeah,
strategy together?
I launched VC Fast Pitch about 13 or so years ago. And honestly, it happened because I went to a pitch event that I thought was terrible, in all frankness. I went to a pitch event where the entrepreneurs were pitching. They won some free software and a little trophy, but the people that they were pitching to weren't investors. And that the whole that just didn't resonate with me. If you're going to pitch, you know, pitch to someone who actually can change your life and make an investment. I have two boys. They're both out of college now, but when they were playing sports, I said, look, you practice is good, but it doesn't matter until you play the game. And so I had a really tough concept with that. And so what I did is I decided to democratize the process. We vet the investors that are on our panel first to see if they're accredited, active angel or VC investors. And then we allow companies to not necessarily apply. They can, if they're referred to somebody, we'll bring them in. If they're a pitch coaching client, they get an opportunity to present. So we kind of flipped it upside down, and it's we've done. I think we're going to hit our 78th event coming up next week. We do an online event every month, and we do an in-person event about 5 to 6 times a year around the country.
Nate. Well, there again, tons of value. It seems like everything you do kind of parallels value to be able to energize that an entrepreneur into the next level and connect them with the right people. Now again, marketing part of it, right? Having sold businesses, having grown them, having been able to be in different areas and industries of leadership. In your opinion, where is marketing in that scenario, right? Marketing and sales, they always battle against each other.
Sure.
What's your thought on that, and how that early stage entrepreneur can really kind of
hmm
make sure that they strategically go after areas that they could grow well in?
Well, I think marketing is paramount at all stages of a business. I remember, when I was an early stage, financial advisor, I was told that I'm going to lose 20% of my business every year. Someone's
Hmm.
going to die. Someone's going to move. Some divorce is going to happen. So I need to make sure I replace at least that 20% of business every year. So just to be able to sustain a business, you have to consistently be in the sales and marketing business. And, the internet provides and social media provide, a great opportunity to continue the dialogue. I have, 30,000, close to 35,000 followers on LinkedIn, probably a couple 100,000 total on social media. But every day, I'm reaching out to somebody new on LinkedIn or social media chat, and I'm introducing myself to them. And then every day I take those people I meet and I try to get with them offline, whether it's on a phone call, a Zoom, or a one-on-one meeting. So, I have a large network, and honestly, I don't necessarily have to go market to build my business. I get a fair amount of referrals on a monthly basis. But I realize that, like you mentioned before, your network is your net worth. And I, even to this day, it's still a part of what I do. You have to fill the funnel constantly.
Yeah. I mean, I will say one of the things I learned from a guy named Ed Milet, he talks about don't ever go to lunch alone or breakfast alone, right?
Right.
Try to invite this, 35,000 people. That's a vast network. Obviously, impossible to connect with them on a daily basis, all of them. But
Right.
social media allows you to then maybe touch them, share a
hmm
great viewpoint of maybe
Yep.
something that you've learned, a newsletter. These are
Yep.
different touch points and ways, right? So from the Black Dog side of things, what is the pace of play, right? You said that some people get referred in, some people maybe go to the website and become
Mhm.
registered to talk to you. What is that dynamic of the client journey from the entrepreneur side working
Mhm.
with Black Dog?
So on the entrepreneur side, honestly, the VC Fast Pitch and our webinars have been a really good way to engage with new folks. And so the reality is we allow everyone to attend a VC Fast Pitch event complimentary, just so they can see how we operate, how we do that side of it. Then they may graduate to becoming a presenter at one of the events. And honestly, that is a good place to do due diligence for me. If I found if an entrepreneur can't effectively present their vision and their opportunity in 5 minutes or less, they're going to have a tough time doing it in 15 minutes or more. Um, and so I use that as kind of the criteria. The reality is like I said, I probably get on average 500 pitch decks a month. I would not be surprised that during this interview, there's not 3 or 4 emails or LinkedIn DMs that I received. So I look for certain attributes of the entrepreneur before we engage them. I want entrepreneurs that are willing to grind, this is not a hobby, it's a full-time job. They're taking the leap without the net, because that's what I did. And so there's certain attributes I look at, and then obviously the engagement process, like I said, really depends. In some cases, we may make an investment through angel groups or a syndicate that I participate in. Um, they may hire us to get the word out on what they're doing to either investors or business partners. So we do that through webinars, cold, email outreach to my network. I still make several hundred phone calls a week on behalf of our portfolio companies and our clients. So it's again the engagement is really again based on who the company is and who the founders are. But we use a couple different channels to determine who if we're a best fit.
Nice, nice. So you have a funnel system, right? I mean, you're basically putting these people through some analyzation, some criteria that they have to hit to be able to then engage. That next step, is it then you determine with them what type of engagements that they need to go to VC Fast Pitch, or
Right,
maybe you thought in your network, oh, okay, I've got 3 or 4 investors that are a good fit for this type of CPG
right.
or that type of thing. Is that the way it works?
Exactly. That's more or less the how it works. And then honestly, they maintain. I still maintain relationships. I do 2 to 3 informational webinars a month that gives them resources that they can learn from. So, because again, I have found that if it's not a fit today, it might be a fit a year from now or 2 years from now. And so I maintain active relationships with everybody I've engaged. And I have 2 webinars I'm hosting next week, on topics that are things that entrepreneurs need. They're free. We use that to, give them education because at the end of the day, I think a smart entrepreneur is a better opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always good to be guided by people that, have been in the trenches, which is good to be aligned with that, right? As we talked about earlier. No, now I'm pretty intrigued. It seems like, you've obviously had these exits, you've had success. You said that, retirement technically wasn't for you. It brought you back into the fray and lathered up and, with your sleeves rolled up. When you talk about webinars, seminars, VC Fast Pitch, Black Dog, all this stuff, what is, I guess, the pattern of play in that scenario? Because ultimately, are you working with a team that also puts their that you've invested in and gotten to a level where they can kind of assimilate the knowledge that you've had, or are you doing all these things and just kind of being omnipresent?
No, we have a team. I mean, honestly, it's not a large team. And, in the past, I've had, been, been CEO of publicly traded companies with hundreds of employees. And this stage of my career, that's not something I'm interested in. But yeah, we have a staff that runs social media, event management. We have, analysts that will review opportunities. And they all provide me the opportunity to do the thing I do best, and that's connect people. And so the extent that I can get rid of, or that's a bad term, not get rid of, but delegate some of those tasks to others, absolutely we have a team. We have social media, the digital marketing team. We used to have a business development team, and in all frankness, we don't need that. So we assign them to something else. So
I love it. I love it. Well, here's a good nugget. I know that all these entrepreneurs and people that come to the Go for CEO channel looking for either their personal life to become better or their business life to become better. What is it that you look for when you're delegating? Because I think, from a small business side, maybe 300,000, half a million, 1.5 million, 2 million, you still have business owners that are founders that are so deep into the business working in it. They've never found, oh, okay, here's the right talent to take over this segment of my business. What are some of your thoughts with the success you've had, how you
right.
identify these people can take over?
Yeah, I was told a long time, these are some catchphrases, but I hire slowly and fire quickly.
Mm,
Um, and what I mean by hire slowly is I get to understand and know somebody first because as we're dealing with individuals and humans to this point. At some point, obviously we have AI tools and AI hasn't replaced me yet. But the idea is you have to have a personality fit. Um, I think in the beginning you have to really disclose and manage expectations from the beginning. I think that's the biggest challenge is when the folks you delegate people to don't understand your view of what success is, your view of what not being successful is, they then you give them a clearer path on the key aspects of that delegation. And it's accountability. I stay in constant contact with the folks I delegate to. We have no less than 2 calls a week. They have an open policy. They can call me and text me at any point in time, and I'll jump on the phone. So I think it comes down to managing expectations in the beginning, having a good personality fit, because obviously that helps with culture, um, and honestly, just maintain accountability. And I am not a micromanager. I like to empower people to do things themselves. Um, so I need to give them all the tools to do it on their own and act on behalf of me.
They say, I think I picked this up somewhere, maybe I just made it up, but micromanage people that need micromanagement earned it. So, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
so it's interesting, right? Those that complain about being micromanaged, and it could be the leader at times that maybe there's that lack of self-confidence and needing to kind of control everything. But those that need to be micromanaged have earned it because they're not showing those capabilities, right? Those competencies to be able to be out there on their own and bring back real data that hey, there's progress, right? You don't always have to win every day,
Right.
but you could be progressing every day,
Yeah.
and that's why these tools, CRMs, and all these things are capturing data for all of us to make sure that even from a management style or from a business development, kind of where you're heading on a daily basis. So. Well, look, I love this area of business because, I wear another hat, not just a podcaster, in the commercial banking world. And I love talking to this area of the money world. When you think about a good opportunity for an investor, let's take it from that side.
Hmm.
People that have made a decent amount of money. And now they're thinking, hey, should I be a general partner and start my own thing? Should I be an LP? What are your
Hmm.
thoughts about that and the significance of leveraging that cash that now you made into investments and people?
Well, I will first off saying that, in my world represents probably the highest risk you know,
Hmm.
category of investments. So obviously you're dealing in private companies and entrepreneurs. You got a extremely high failure rate. So I would first of all make the decision, of a portion of your investment dollars that are high risk or, maybe a step removed from going to Vegas, and understand that. But then get educated. You know, even I've actually spent times interning even the last several years at other venture capital firms or, working for them complimentary just so I can learn the industry. Go to conferences and learn from these people first. And then there's several ways to approach making these investments. You can invest in individual startups. There's a lot of venture capital funds and angel groups that take on, limited partners and co-investors. That might be the approach to go. And I launched a podcast specifically to put that opportunity in front of investors looking at venture. So again, it's, understand the risk, get educated, um, invest in what you know first. Don't invest in hype. That really applies to probably every level of investment, but it's probably more prevalent in angel and venture capital investing than anywhere else.
All right, I love that because ultimately, these investors, it's risk, right? There's big rewards in this arena of money, right? And a lot of people don't know that, and unfortunately, I mean, well, I guess if you haven't earned it, you're not in this arena, right?
Right.
You haven't been able to do that. You haven't taken enough risk yourself of being an entrepreneur and having an exit or having the reward of that opportunity. But it is interesting when people are actually trying to raise capital, who they're targeting is very important too, right? Is
It
there a
is
good
the most
connection
important
there?
thing. It's
Yeah.
the most important thing.
Tell us a
Uh,
little bit more about that then.
well, I tell people, and when entrepreneurs come to me and they ask, when should I start raising capital? I tell them 6 months ago. And the reason I tell them that is you have to do there's a lot of sales in it. You have to, one, build a network of potential investors that you can outreach because the reality is you will hear hundreds of no's, hundreds. Um, and also you have to be very specific about the type of investor you're trying to approach. You want to approach investors that invest in your stage of development. The vast majority of startup entrepreneurs should not be talking to venture capital firms. They should be talking to angels and high net worth people. The other thing is you need to make sure that you're talking to investors that invest or have an interest in your industry. Don't go after a high tech investor, for your real estate startup. They just won't jive. And what you'll do is you'll do two things. You'll waste their time and you'll waste yours. Neither of them is a good thing. So I would say, like any sales process, you have to, one, build the funnel of potential investors, do some homework about who they are, so you make sure you're talking to the right investors. And then I always say, the reason I say 6 months prior is that begin by asking for advice first before you ask for money. See what you can do to benefit that investor. Maybe you share their content on social media. Maybe you attend an event that they're hosting. Because this is still a relationship business. That the biggest thing I will warn any entrepreneur to avoid doing, because it just doesn't work. I don't care who you talk to. It may work 1 in 1,000 times, is do not connect with an investor on LinkedIn and immediately put your pitch deck into their DM. You will be deleted. You will be ignored.
Yeah.
Um, so this is a relationship business, and investors get hundreds of opportunities presented to them. Hundreds of those opportunities are presented to people that they know and like. So you have to get to that point quick as possible.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've got quite a few buddies that have done well, and it's interesting. They put themselves in an LP position or even in an angel position, and yeah, every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to get money from them, right? That Tom, Dick, and Harry, unfortunately, didn't position themselves the right way to
Right.
be looked at as a credible opportunity. And typically, it's through me, right? Like I'm a debt guy, right? I'm a commercial banker. I'm looking to deploy debt out there in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And then obviously the investors are coming. So here's a question for you that I think the Go for community would love to know from your perspective is how does an entrepreneur that is looking for this type of debt, right, which is really an investment, you know, avoid total dilution and not having control of their business. But man, they really want that 2, 3, 10, 20, $30 million investment or more. What are
Right.
your thoughts on that compared to obviously what I'm pitching is more, hey, go the debt route and keep 100% control.
Right. Well, again, I think debt is a valid way in the beginning. I think grants are a valid opportunity in the beginning. What you want to do as an entrepreneur, you want to be able to get in front of investors from a position of strength. And what I mean by that is if you, and especially in this day and age of AI and vibe coding and everything else, you don't need, $10 million and 50 developers. You might need a $500,000 and two project managers now to build your technology startup. So I think be in the business of building a business first. I think the reality is you can access debt, whether it be, personally guaranteed or not, or look at grant opportunities, or honestly, build your first level product. I tell entrepreneurs all the time that, I get folks that say, I've got this great app that can do X. And I say, okay, well, tell me how you would sell this product or service before smartphones. And then tell me how you would sell this product or service before the internet. If you can't
Mhm.
sell it without those tools, the tools aren't going to provide you any additional value. And so I think you've got to be somewhat pragmatic. And honestly, it's the irony is I help companies raise capital and invest all the time. The vast majority of businesses suggest sell and build and sell and build and don't even approach venture capital firms. If you build something big, they'll find you.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's a guy I follow, Hermosi, Alex Hermosi, that talks about, right. You can market the heck out of something, but if it's crap, it ain't going anywhere, right?
Right,
So,
right.
as you just said, right, like invest in the prototype, invest in in the go to market understanding of what that product or service is going to do. What's the value in the marketplace, and is there something? What do they call it? Product market fit, right?
Exactly.
And is there something there that people really want? Test it and do some due diligence before you go and ask for $2 million or what have you, right?
Right. Yeah, there's some famous stories about companies that raised a bunch of money and didn't solve a problem. When I taught at entrepreneurship at a college in Phoenix several years ago, and I always tell the story of a company called Userio. They raised $120 million from some of the smartest venture capital firms in America. And their solution was to create a blender that was a juicer that was powered by your phone and could create a juice product in, I think it was 3 minutes. They put out a YouTube video showing how they made juice in 3 minutes. And I think everyone can understand the end of the story. A bunch of people put out videos on how they can make juice in 90 seconds in their blender for $100 versus the 2000 I said blender that they were trying to sell. And long story short, and you can Google this article. They went through $120 million and went bankrupt inside of 24 months.
Wow. Wow, man, the R&D, oh, wow, that's incredible. And you know what? That stuff happens, Gopher Show community, right? Like
Sure.
it is out there. People have and companies have and enterprises have money on the sideline, right?
Yeah.
I love the notion of like, well, there's no money out there for me. Well, no, there's a lot of money out there for you. You just haven't found the right partner, haven't worked a
Right.
guy like Scott, in your corner, all those types of things. So let's go into, obviously we're doing a podcast. I'd love to know a little bit about what's your thoughts on what you've been doing with your podcast and a little
Yeah.
bit of that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm pretty new to podcasting, so I own a stake in a podcasting company, and my partner continually came to me and asked about doing a podcast, and I said, "What am I going to do a podcast on?" And the end of last year, 2025, there was a really interesting article came out about in venture capital firms. There was an article that there are 3,200 venture capital firms in the United States, and of those, close to 75% of the dollars went to the top 25 venture capital firms. And so the light bulb went on, the Emerging Managers podcast. And so what I found was there's a lot of very good, lesser known, smaller venture capital funds that, from a good standpoint, get better returns and better alpha because they truly actively manage their portfolio. But the challenge is they had a more difficult time getting in front of potential investors than the startups did. So we launched the Emerging Managers podcast to showcase brand new fund managers, lesser known fund managers, and specialty fund managers. So they're not the ones that you'll hear about on the financial news. And we've had some great results. We just finished I think our 50th episode. We've gotten tremendous response, and honestly, we've had LPs specifically invest in these venture funds directly by listening to the podcast. So that's been really rewarding. So, you know, uh, there is a lot of money out there. There are trillions of dollars out there. But you're right, finding the right way to get in front of the right person, that is That is the challenge for everybody.
The coup de grace, right, as they say. So awesome, awesome. Well, hey, look, a lot of our journey on these podcasts is really understanding the ideation, understanding sales, marketing, operations, leadership, all these types of things, and funding, right? You've taken us through a little bit of the story of it, so I was super excited about that. Let's go back to where, CEO, which is client experience engagement with your vendors, your employees, your leadership team, your clients, and always operational excellence. So to end the podcast, we talk about those three areas. Now,
Mhm.
from a Black Dog perspective, or you just talked about the podcast, what is the value proposition when working with Black Dog from a client experience?
Well, I think the primary things are experience and perspective. The reality is, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I've been a founder. I've taken a company from my spare bedroom to being acquired by a public company. So I've done that. I know the shortfalls, and frankly, at the end of the internet, I lost hundreds of millions of dollars. So I understand perspective. I understand building something great. I understand taking a hit and moving forward. So I think that's the one, probably the primary thing is experience, relationships, but perspective. I can tell an entrepreneur the right things to do and more importantly, things to avoid in order to move fast and move effectively.
I love that. Putting yourself in the right seat in front of Scott, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a, aspiring entrepreneur, if you're in that beginning stage, if you just hit seven figures and you're looking now for a type of capital that's outside of debt, sitting down in front of Scott and allowing him to diagnose what is the next step is such a crucial thing. I won't get into it, but I have an idea about advisory boards for small businesses because nobody has them. Nobody uses advisory boards, and I think I'm like always like you should have an advisory board. You should have two people in the industry, two people outside, and one person out here. And but that's another podcast. We'll have to talk offline about that. So, but
Absolutely.
awesome, awesome stuff. So now engagement, right? Obviously, you've had success. We didn't really talk about your family and these types of things. I know you said your two sons and all that, but what is the way that people engage with you? Now, you said you're super active. You're making hundreds of calls still every week,
Mhm.
and all these things. Is that your biggest engagement? Do you take people out to dinner all the time? Are you having retreats? What's the way that
Yeah,
you engage best?
we do we host one-on-one webinars with investors. We have another event that we host called Investors and Innovators. It's a cocktail party at either on a cruise ship or in a mansion where we connect people and have those conversations. Because even at pitch events, the pitch isn't really where the magic happens. It's in the back of the room. It's in the hallway. It's having those conversations. So absolutely. We do those all the time, as a host or a co-host or a sponsor. But yeah, I'm constantly engaged. That's why I do the webinars. The reality is I find that I may not have the tool that can help them, but I probably know somebody who does. And so the idea is that, we have entrepreneurs that sign up for our webinars, every single webinar, whether it's on debt or on other aspects of growing their business. So we are constantly engaging them through webinars, podcasts, in-person events. I am a consummate networker. And like you mentioned before, I am a charter member of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
I love it, man. There is no rest for the weary, right? Like you have to be out there, no matter how successful you are, ladies and gentlemen, go for CEO community. Look at Scott's journey here. Multiple exits, and yeah, took a stint of retirement, quote unquote, to be on the beach. But a true winner, a true player, is in the field and not in the stands. And until the day we die, which we all are going to die, right? But we can have an impact and do things to really move other people forward. And what a legacy you're leaving with all these people that you've touched throughout your life, Scott. So it's really awesome. That's engagement. I love it. So
Thank you.
operational excellence from a black dog to emerging, the podcast. What are some of the tools that you're using? Are you You mentioned AI a couple times.
Mhm.
Are you a big proponent of that? Have you had these softwares that have always helped you from organization to, optimizing,
Sure.
categories of investors? What are tools that you're using?
Well, some of the tools, obviously, I have a CRM. We utilize those tools to, bring in new relationships and engage them through email and other campaigns. We actually have we work with tools to go out there, and quite frankly, we used a tool to get on this podcast. So we use tools to do outreach to the podcast hosts and the media. And so we have a lot of, I'm becoming, it's interesting. I'm 61 years old, and someone told me the other day is that once you get past 50, it's hard to adapt to new ideas. And I've realized that I was a little slow to the game, relatively speaking, to AI, but I'm embracing it now. We use AI to create content for social media. We use AI to talk to potential investors and build investor networks. So it's we have a lot of tools that we use. And like I said, we have staff that help implement those tools. My job as a leader is to figure out the end result, which is a profitable company and a great opportunity for everybody involved. But that doesn't happen without a good team and good tools, behind you. So I definitely use a number of tools on both the marketing, sales, and relationship part of the business.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a ton of wisdom in this Power Pack podcast. Super excited that you were on, Scott. And, tell people how to get a hold of you. What's the best way to start to engage with Black
Sure.
Dog if there's some aspiring entrepreneurs out there and people that want to change their lives with maybe that one person that they meet that's an investor that goes to the next level?
Sure. Well, obviously, you can reach it at any of the websites. You can go to VC Fastpace to learn about our events. You can go to blackdogventurepartners.com to learn about what we're doing on the other side of the business. Um, all social media can be found at Black Dog CEO. LinkedIn's probably the primary source that I am on constantly. And then obviously, you can reach out to me. My email is scott@blackdogvp.com.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not subscribed to the channel and do this enough, keep on building this community. Look at this story. Scott comes on to the Go for CO channel, shares with you real insights, things that he's been doing since the 90s, 2000, 2010s. And he could have easily been the last 5, 10, 15 years on the beach doing nothing, right? But he's invested in you. He's still on this social media. And he said 61 is young. You got 30 more years of giving us love and giving us energy and power and glory. So I love it. So being a part of this, make sure you subscribe to the channel when we post this. Like, subscribe, and then also share it out into the community so that we can all benefit from great information and knowledge that people like Scott share. So thanks so much for being on the Go for CO channel, Scott.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.